So I'm here with Jeff Eisenband, senior editor of the Post Game. He's going checking in with the Unnecessary Roughness podcast today. What's going on today, Jeff?
Not much. All good.
So you've done some work with the 2K League, and esports leagues have become really popular in a short amount of time. As someone who's worked behind the scenes with that, why do you think it's become popular so quickly?
I think that, there's, and maybe some middle-aged people don't really understand it, but that, kids are coming up with video games, but not just video games, because, you can look at basically anyone 45 or younger came up with with a video game console playing it, but, YouTube and other ways to watch people play weren't around back then, in the 90s and the early 2000s, you might have loved playing Madden with your friends as a teenager or something, but you couldn't really watch other people play it. And I know I'm using Madden. They had that Madden bus on ESPN, but you couldn't just watch YouTube and see what's going on. Now, a game like NBA 2K, which so many young NBA fans play, they're also able to watch the coolest dunks, the coolest plays, and the best players in the game. So, even these guys, these players, have been known in the community for a few years by a lot of really avid NBA 2K players.
Now, you said that maybe for a middle-aged person, maybe the age of 45, it might not be something that they might necessarily understand. So for the average Joe sports fan, someone who just watches the games on TV, they might not necessarily tweet about it or post highlights on Instagram. Why should someone be interested in something like the 2K? Why should someone like that be interested in the 2K League?
Well, the first fact of the matter is they probably won't, and it's not necessarily something that should be forced upon them, but they should know that, the 2K League especially is going to be going on all summer when there's no other basketball. And, when you sit down and watch these games, at least for me, it's, you feel yourself getting invested in the competition. You feel it's two teams going against each other. They're trying to run an offense, basically the same way as an NBA team, and they're trying to score more points than the other team. And, even I'm watching some games and I see a defensive slip up and I'm like, oh my God, how could they let them go back door like that? So I feel myself invested in just the competition aspect. And why don't you add in less commercials, quicker games, game speed. If anyone has played a video game, people don't take 24 seconds to shoot the ball. So, there's more entertainment in a shorter period of time. And even if it's just, I think that for some people it's been a little overwhelming because it's been 3 games on Friday nights and then, a lot on, 7 games on Saturday. So it's a long time. You don't have to watch the whole thing. I advise people to take a peek, watch a game or two, see what's going on, and just understand. Also, the coolest part is you get to see the intensity of these guys and learn their stories, guys that never expected to be where they are right now, and they're competing at the highest level of what they do.
Do you think the players in the 2K League can kind of become household names the same way regular athletes have?
I think it's going to take some time. I think that when I'm talking basketball, I'm talking NBA 2K League, I'm talking sports gaming in particular. I think it's still going to take some time, especially because, as I said, that demographic skews so young. But someone like Dimes, who was the first overall pick, they have kind of people now within the basketball world just know him as, he's the first overall pick. The same way that I'll take a guy like Paul Raybill, who is a lacrosse player. People just know him. He's the first, I believe, millionaire lacrosse player. He does a ton of stuff outside of lacrosse. He's just one dude, and I don't know other players in the league. But I think over time, as this league progresses, you're going to see a lot over the summer. The NBA franchises themselves will put more marketing dollars toward their NBA 2K League teams because they won't be competing with the NBA season. And I think the league needs some of that. And I think the more of that, the more grassroots things they do in the community, you're going to see these guys' profiles become bigger.
Right. The league it was just announced in February, so it's pretty much brand new. But there's been people who have been critical about the viewership of the league games because they're lower than they were when they first started. So what would you be your response to that? Because for those people who really haven't given it enough time to say if it's a success or if it's a failure.
I think that people, need to understand that this is a league that's just starting. I don't think people necessarily complained about the first time the NBA was put on TV back in, whenever the 50s. I don't know how strong those numbers were right off the bat competing with other sports. I think that the NBA community is still invested in the NBA season. We still have an NBA Finals to play. I think that's part of why the 2K League got started when it did, to honestly figure out the kinks for a month before, people started scrutinizing it a little bit more. I think that it's naive for people to say, oh, well, they played a Friday night game and there were no Friday night NBA games and people didn't watch. Well, every NBA fan, that's a night off to them. NBA fans have been watching the NBA basketball every night for the past 2 months during the playoffs. So, I think there's a little bit of just also NBA fan fatigue right now. I think during the summer there's going to be a lot of people that say, hey, I just want to try this out and see what it is. And I think there's going to be a lot of people, honestly skewing more younger, who look at it and say, this is awesome, I want to keep following along. And maybe they watch a week here and there. Maybe they tune back in more for the playoffs. I think that for the NBA, it's an investment. And it's understanding that you might need 2 to 3 years to really get it right and to figure out, when is the best time. Every game this year, the games are all, regular season games are all Friday night and Saturday. Is that the best time? I don't know. We'll see going forward. So, there's still some kinks to be worked out, but the fact that people would judge something after maybe 3 weeks is ridiculous to me.
True. So how do you think the 2K League is going to compare to other the actual major sports leagues that we have going on now?
I think that people recognize it's going to take a long time. It's not like they're going to compete with these leagues. They're more of a complement to the league. Adam Silver called it the fourth league with the WNBA and the G League. It's not like, I think people don't look at those leagues and say, when are they going to compete with the viewership of the NBA? But it's a complement to the league. It's a way to engage fans. If you ask a lot of 14-year-olds what they would rather watch, an NBA 2K League, an average NBA 2K League regular season game between two average teams, or like the Magic against, the Kings, I'd like to see what they choose. And I think that people would be surprised how many of those young people who are so tapped into 2K, would choose watching other people play video games over the NBA. And that's not to say I think the NBA product is failing youth. I think it's just that's how people, are brought up. I think FIFA, to me, is a great barometer of so many American kids just know soccer players because they play a ton of FIFA. And I think that they're more tapped into the FIFA video game than they are to, the Champions League going on. So I think that people need to understand just how avid people are in video games and professional leagues in these video games, because remember, MLS and NHL have bought into their own e-leagues coming up because people know about these because people love these games so much, the leagues were going to develop. So credit the NBA for stepping in and saying, hey, we license these games anyway. Why don't we take ownership of this, which is going to happen regardless.
Right. You started the 102 podcast where you talk to players and other people who are a part of the 2K League. What would you say has been the best part of doing that so far?
I mean, I just love learning these guys' stories because, you talk about the NBA and it's different. I mean, even the worst NBA players were AAU stars who have been trying to make the NBA since they were, 12 or 13 years old, right? These guys, these gamers, I mean, they were working, none of them expected this. They were working, warehouse jobs. There's a guy in the Blazers who was from Brooklyn who was delivering packages around New York City, right, around the Madison Square Garden neighborhood. And then he got drafted at Madison Square Garden. His name is Lavish Phenom. there's some guy, there's just these stories that I've learned. There's a guy, Fab, the second overall pick, Fab on the Celtics, who was basically, no one knew what he looked like for years, but he was a figment of the, a fixture of the community. And just learning these stories, I am Adam the First, who's on Knicks Gaming, who people know was a YouTuber, Kid Kuda, who's 19 years old. He was a gaming YouTuber and decided he thought he was good enough to make the league. Teams were skeptical of him. He went in the 4th round to Knicks Gaming, and he's been one of the top players in the league so far. I mean, it's just really interesting stories about real people who, were living their lives and didn't expect this all to happen.